beginning of your life.
Human rights, human rights.
You were born with something called human rights.
Human rights, human rights.
It don't matter who you are, everybody near and far. You got rights, we got rights. Everybody's got their human rights. You got rights, we got rights. Everybody, everyone, everywhere has human rights. Everyone, everywhere has human rights.
Human rights, human rights. Human rights, human rights.
Regardless of race, color, sex, or religion.
Human rights, human rights.
No matter about your language, status, or your origin.
Human rights, human rights.
It don't matter who you are, everybody near and far. You got rights, we got rights. Everybody's got their human rights. You got rights, we got rights. Everybody, everyone, everywhere has human rights. Everyone, everywhere has human rights. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, no one has a right to take your rights from you.
Human rights, human rights.
It don't matter who you are, everybody near and far. You got rights, we got rights. Everybody, everyone, everywhere has human rights. Everyone, everywhere.
This is Joy Berry reminding you that like all kids, you have human rights. To learn more about them, go to kidsforglobalpeace.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on human rights. I'm Olga Sher, your presenter today. I'm glad you found some time to join us, and we're going to have a great discussion. I will ask you to maybe mute your microphones for now so there's no static, and grab your pencils and your notepads. You may want to make some notes during the process of the class. So we will start with a very basic premise. What is human right? Here's a very basic premise. A person is a person no matter how small. I'm sure most of you know this saying. This is from Horton Hears a Who by Dr. Seuss. And what does it mean? It means that regardless of your size, gender, age, we all have similar rights. Why is that? Because we are human beings. And what exactly does it mean to be a human? You may think about it for a few minutes. If you'd like, write down some words that you associate with this concept. It may be free, it may be ability to work, ability to go to school, and human rights promote basic standards of living equally, with respect and in dignity. They're absolutely necessary to live well. Without them, it will be like the law of the jungle. Imagine that if our government could just behead us if we posted a picture on Instagram that they don't like, or if we posted something on Snapchat that they don't like. So these are funny examples, right? But we all know that in history, there were some real examples of big human rights violations. And maybe you can think of some, just write them down for now. We can discuss them later. Just give me 1 second. I can now look at who else is waiting. Okay, so some of the examples that I can think of that happened in history are apartheid in South Africa, for example, or the Holocaust, right? Slavery of Black people in the United States, forced relocation of Japanese Americans during World War II on the west coast of the United States. Yeah, those are some of the examples. And what about animals and nature? Are they entitled to any rights, or is it just for humans? That's a good question, right? Because there's so many people who are concerned about animals and nature. And animals have rights too. Not as many as humans, unfortunately, but there are some really dedicated organizations that are fighting to expand animals' rights, because all animals, wildlife, animals raised for food, they all have rights too, right, against animal cruelty, neglect, exploitation, and abuse. And let's think about nature. I mean, we all depend on nature for clean air, water, good food, environment. Should not nature, where all life is reproduced, have the right to respect and dignity also? What do you think? So there are a few organizations who are working hard to establish the rights of nature laws around the world. For example, the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature is now asking the United Nations to adopt the Universal Declaration of Rights of Mother Nature, similar as for humans. So going back to human rights, what exactly are they? What does it mean? It's right for us to be allowed to do something, or to have, or to be. They are there for our protection against those who may want to do something that does not serve us or that's not for our benefit. They are also to help us to get along with each other and to live in peace. So imagine, for example, if you lived on the street, right, had no home, food, were sick, and could not go to school. That would be an example of a violation of some basic human, economic, and social rights. Violation of the right to adequate housing, violation of the right to rest, violation of the right to education. So now that we understand what they are, let's think for a second, who exactly does what? Who is responsible for them? Where do they come from? The concern for human rights is not confined to just our web room, right? It's not confined to just country or to the Western world. It's an international issue around the whole world. And it all started a long time ago. There are a few landmark documents that have been established where people try to enforce human rights and to make sure that the human rights are protected. Started with Magna Carta in England in 1215 between unpopular King John of England and a group of rebel barons. And King promised them some protections of their church rights, protection from illegal imprisonment, access to swift justice. So that was the first one. And there were a few other texts after that, and it all culminated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948 that was enacted by United Nations. That document came about right after the World War II, after all of the unspeakable barbarity of the conflict, and it set out basic freedoms comprising of 30 articles to which all humans are entitled. It is safeguarded and underwritten by the United Nations, as I said, and many countries have adopted it into their constitution and their laws. And this document protects basic rights such as right to live, right to vote, freedom of expression, prohibition of slavery, and torture. So this is all well and good on paper, right? But what happens in reality? In reality, there's some pretty bad students. And that's because the declaration is not a legislative text. What does it mean? It's a guidance. It's an ideal. It is not valid in the court of law unless the countries decided to adopt it into their constitution. So when they are in the constitution, that means that the state must guarantee them to their people. But in order to have that protection, we all need to know them, right? So we can defend them. So really, it's everyone's job to make sure that they are respected. Collective consciousness means that every single person and child is responsible for his or her and everybody else's well-being on this planet. Therefore, we can all get involved. We can all learn how to speak up. We can learn our own rights. We can be active in our communities. So now I'd like to talk about fairy tales. Why fairy tales? Because we'll learn many, many important things from them. And you all remember fairy tales that you heard from your parents and grandparents when you were little and learned some basic things from them, such as how to play fair, how not to judge people based on their looks, how to be kind to others. But they also teach us about more important things, like how our society should function, how our communities should function in order to be successful. They tell us about stories of struggle, stories of oppression. Think about the stepmother in Snow White, for example, who was very oppressive, right? So fairy tales is a safe and imaginative place that provides us a good environment to confront some complex questions. So today we will talk about the human rights in fairy tales, the ones that have been adopted by the United States Constitution and therefore are guaranteed to us. What does it mean? It means that if we go to court, they can be enforced in the courtroom. So today we will be talking about Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and we will do an imaginative interactive trial. So I welcome you all to participate in our trial, and after we go over the storyline. Probably all of you know the story of the fairy tale, right? But for our purposes, I would like you to pay attention to all of the facts and details because they will be just a little bit different. This trial will be against Goldilocks for something that she did. And what I want you to do, I want you to pick a role in this trial. So later on, when we turn on our cameras and our microphones, you can prepare your case and your questions. You can be either a prosecutor or a defense attorney. What exactly does it mean? If you want to be a lawyer who helps Goldilocks to prove that she is innocent, you can pick a role of a defense attorney. But if you want to try to help the bears to try to prove that Goldilocks did something to them and is guilty, then you can be a prosecutor. Prosecutor is also called the United States Attorney, and they work for the government. They represent the best interest of the public by prosecuting criminal behavior. So think about it for a second, pick your role, make some notes, and just remember that there is no good or bad role. Both are very valuable for our educational experience. As we go through the story, please pay attention to all of the facts and information that I will be giving you. As I said, it may be a little different. Take notes. So once all of the facts are presented, we will then turn on the cameras and discuss this. So listen up. Welcome everyone to our trial. We are now in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Enchanted Forest. On trial, United States versus Goldilocks, with Olga Scher presiding as a judge. And the judge also has a job to do in the trial. I have the job to be impartial, neutral, pay attention to all of the information that you will give me to your arguments, and I also have the duty to consider all of the facts in the case. So here is the story. In December of 2017, while exploring the forest one day, Goldilocks became lost. After some time, it began to get cold and stormy looking. She became scared and hungry. It was 30 degrees outside. She wandered around and finally came upon a cabin in the woods and entered. She found 3 bowls of porridge on the table And when she went to the living room, there were 3 chairs. She sat in one and broke it. After eating the porridge, she went to the bedroom and she found 3 beds. She lay down on one and immediately fell asleep because she was tired. The 3 bears came back. They went to the kitchen, found that their porridge was eaten, that the bowl, baby bear's bowl, was completely empty. They went to the living room and noticed that furniture had been disturbed. At this point, they realized someone came into their home uninvited and without permission. When they went to the bedroom, they discovered someone was still there. Baby bear cried out, "Someone has been sleeping in my bed and she's still there." Baby bear shouted that it was Goldilocks, a human. Baby bear knew her from school. After hearing shouting and crying, Goldilocks awoke and ran out of the cabin, frightened by the bears. So what happened next? Then the 3 bears followed her into the national forest and found a park ranger there. They complained that Goldilocks had broken into their home, destroyed property, and stole their porridge. The park ranger found Goldilocks and gave her a notice to appear in court on 3 criminal charges: breaking and entering, theft, and the destruction of property. So now we're going to go over some legal terminology. Breaking and entering means to go into the house or dwelling of another without permission. Theft means to take something as you own that does not belong to you. Destruction of property means to damage something that does not belong to you. And here are a few more facts that may either help the case against the Goldilocks or in favor of Goldilocks, so listen up. The hunter who saw Goldilocks enter the cabin was not wearing his or her glasses. The 3 bears saw Goldilocks run out of the cabin. The baby bear felt sorry for Goldilocks and asked her if she wanted more porridge. Goldilocks was an expert in the forest and was familiar with most sections of it. Goldilocks was found by the bears at 6 p.m. and it was still light outside. It's unclear if Goldilocks broke the windows or not. So those are some additional facts that I would like you to consider. And now, before we turn our cameras on, here I will offer you some help. So those of you who decided to be U.S. attorney or prosecutors trying to prove that Goldilocks is guilty, here are some questions that you may want to ask your witnesses. Witnesses are everyone who's involved in the case. Goldilocks, bears, ranger, hunter. You can ask your questions, anyone. So, did Goldilocks have permission from the bears to enter the cabin? Why did Goldilocks eat the porridge? When the bears returned to the cabin, did they see the windows broken or not? Did the bears feel scared when they saw Goldilocks in their bed? Was the park ranger in the forest the day in question? What exactly did he see? Did the hunter see Goldilocks break the windows? Did Goldilocks seem familiar with the forest to the hunter and knew how to get home? So here are some of the questions that may help you. And just imagine what your witness would tell you to answer this question. You can make up any story you want that you think will help your case. So now, those of you who want to be defense attorneys trying to prove that Goldilocks is not guilty, here are some questions that you may want to ask. Was it cold that day? Why did the bears leave porridge on the table? Did they feel sorry for the Goldilocks because she was lost, hungry, and scared? Did they leave the door unlocked? Did they see Goldilocks break the window? Did the rangers know if Goldilocks ever committed the crime before? Did the hunter see Goldilocks break the windows? Is it true that Hunter could not see well? Did Goldilocks seem familiar with the forest to the hunter and seem to know how to get home? So these are all of your questions that you may want to consider. Okay, the judge is now ready to issue the verdict in the case after hearing all of the arguments in the case by the prosecutor and the defense side. And based on all of the facts presented in the case, I find that Goldilocks is guilty on all 3 charges. And the explanation for the verdict is that based on all of the evidence presented, it seems to me that Goldilocks was in the woods simply to gather materials for her science project. She seemed familiar with the woods. She seemed to know her way home. And also, she was well dressed. I understand that she looked cute and innocent and all, but I think she had the means to get her own porridge or leave some kind of a contribution for the one she took, and she did not do it. And another fact that I found very important is that the baby bear who found Goldilocks in his bed may now have insomnia and post-traumatic stress disorder. Imagine what it feels like for a baby finding a stranger in their bed in their own house. I think that's a very big fact that needs to be considered. So the verdict is that the Goldilocks is guilty of, on 3 charges, breaking and entering, destruction of property, and theft. So now what? Do you think this is over? Now Goldilocks decided to file for appeal. We are now on appeal. What does it mean? It means that in our court system in the United States, we have a hierarchy of courts. We have lower courts and higher courts to make sure there are no mistakes. Higher courts check on lower courts' mistakes to make sure that nothing weird happened. So Goldilocks went to a higher court and said that her constitutional rights, we are now talking about human rights, right, that have been codified into the United States Constitution, have been violated. Specifically, her Fifth Amendment right and the Sixth Amendment right. Fifth Amendment guarantees us due process, and Sixth Amendment guarantees the fair trial. So she first said that the Fifth Amendment was violated because everyone knows the story of Goldilocks, and our decision was tainted by that story. It was not based on just the facts in the case, but our prior knowledge. And also the Fifth Amendment assures people that they have the right not to be forced to testify against themselves. These rights apply to every citizen in our country. I questioned Goldilocks, and I never told her that she has the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Every defendant in criminal cases has the right not to speak up if they feel that the information may hurt their case. So do you think the Fifth Amendment was violated based on what I just said? I think it was. And the Sixth Amendment violation is happens when the person does not get the right to speedy in public trial, there's no impartial jury, and no competent assistance of an attorney. Did we have a jury in our case? No, we did not have a jury. Goldilocks did not have the benefit of impartial people getting to decide her case. So we had the Sixth Amendment violation. So these are just 2 examples, right? But the Bill of Rights also promises other rights to the criminal defendants, people who are being tried in courts. Every defendant is presumed to be innocent unless proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Everyone has the right to remain silent, have the right to public trial and trial by jury, to be represented by attorney and have adequate representation, and not to be tried twice for the same offense, which called double jeopardy. So we went over some basic rights, and I'm glad that we had a chance to do so. If you have any questions, how she did something bad in the first place? That's a good question. You know, we all sometimes make mistakes, and sometimes we don't realize after we do it. Sometimes we're scared. Sometimes we are governed by our emotions and cannot think logically. So it's always good before doing anything to just stop and breathe for a few minutes and think, right? So we don't rush into anything that we may feel sorry for later on. So if you have any questions in the future, here's our website, my email address. Feel free to email me if you want to discuss something relevant to our topic. And also feel free to join our Facebook group, Antinanka Earth Arts Online University, to see the full listing of classes. We offer free classes twice a week, every week through May. So please take advantage of it. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day, everyone.